Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday evening to you all. Last Thursday of the year. We're about to enter another year, 2023, obviously. But we got some things we need to talk about as we enter the new year. I'm talking as early as the second day into the new year, January 2nd. Could be a severe weather event for areas of the South. We're obviously going to talk about that in this video, and then talk about what's leading up to that, because we are seeing a little bit of a potential for some severe weather overnight. No warnings going on right now as I speak, which is kind of surprising, but it's a good thing. But we could have some storms that could cluster up tonight and then march their way across the deep south states, the Gulf states, tomorrow, and could promote a little bit of a severe weather threat. We'll talk on that in the beginning of the video. Then we'll work our way to New Year's Eve and talk about what I'm seeing as far as you can see the wettest weather for your New Year's Eve festivities as we bring in the new year. And then we'll talk about the most in-depth information as we can in regards to the severe weather threat the second day of the new year, which is January 2nd. So we'll figure it out for you folks. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like, and I know for winter weather fans, this is not going to be an interesting video for you folks. Trust me, I like talking about winter weather more than any kind of weather. I enjoy talking about the tropics also, but severe weather is definitely a far off number three when it comes to the big three in the weather world. But it's important to talk about because it affects a lot of people. But quickly, I want to say this. I will not be able to make a video tomorrow. I'm going to try to sneak one in tomorrow morning, but if you folks know that have been watching for a while, I'm a big college football fan. I'm a big South Carolina Gamecock fan. I'm going down to the Gator Bowl in Jacksonville tomorrow to watch the game with my cousin. So it's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to leave very early and try to beat the nasty traffic I'm hearing that's on 95 throughout the day today, and even this evening. But I'm going to try to squeeze one in the morning, but I'm definitely not going to get one tomorrow evening. So we'll get back to the regular flow of things as we get into the 31st, 2 days from now. But if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below, so it gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity also. Let's take out the Storm Prediction Center. So for tomorrow, we have a very... It's pretty small, but it's some highly populated areas. A marginal risk for severe weather. Tomorrow, that's a level 1 out of 5. There's going to be a risk of a tornado, but it's only a 2% risk of a tornado within 25 miles of any given location down here. So not a really big deal. 5% risk of damaging winds, 50 knots or higher, and 25 miles in any given location. We'll watch a little line of storms that pushes through these areas, but there's not a lot of ingredients for severe weather down here. But there is going to be the possibility for some heavy rain. But let's go on and break that down. Let's start off for tomorrow morning, because I might not be able to fit in a video tomorrow for you folks. But starting off, as the sun's coming up, we could have some nasty weather just entering the state of Mississippi and Tennessee. This will continue to march throughout the morning hours. We'll make it away about halfway through the state of Mississippi by about mid-morning, and then we'll be knocking on the door of Alabama around lunchtime. And as basically the further south you go, the more severe these storms can be. But up here, we could have some severe storms, or a level of severity with this kind of congealed line of storms. But I'm expecting more so just heavy rain up here. But down here, this could be a nasty line of storms that works its way through New Orleans about midday around lunchtime tomorrow. Then this continues to affect Alabama, and you could have a pretty intense line of storms, whether it's severe or just strong or just a line of storms. We're not going to be quite sure until it's actually happening, but some nasty weather moving through Mobile around mid-afternoon tomorrow, around 3 o'clock. And so this will continue to work through, get into the western panhandle of Florida by late tomorrow afternoon, and we'll continue to work through, moving through Montgomery, Alabama into the late evening, well, about evening time, and then we'll knock on the door of Atlanta sometime overnight tomorrow night of just some rain. Not going to be that big of a deal as far as any kind of severe weather, but we'll watch the Gulf states down here in the far southern areas that actually border the Gulf of Mexico. We'll watch that. And there's going to be a chance for flooding, a 15% risk in these slight regions, even an area up here and a big area down here. You got a 15% risk for flash flood guidance being met. So we'll see if some areas do get into any kind of flooding, things like that, but hopefully that will not be the case. Moving forward here, we look at the national blend of all models as far as how much rain can fall between now and the morning of New Year's Eve. And, you know, some of this is already starting to fall already, but but like I said, between now and the morning of New Year's Eve, you could have a few inches of rain in northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, southeast Arkansas. Memphis could pick up a couple inches of rain after seeing a little bit of snow a couple times over the last several days. But this is going to be all rain. It has been very warm. Hit 68 degrees in my neck of the woods, and it was widespread 70s. That's one thing I haven't mentioned in the last couple videos, except the morning videos, is how warm it's getting. I mean, it's crazy. For example, I saw in Knoxville it hit 60 degrees a day, I believe. And, you know, it's crazy to think that 2 days ago, they snowed about an inch and a half. And then about 4 or 5 days ago, it was in the single digits. So it's just, and not just a pattern flip, but a really drastic pattern flip to warmer weather. So the warmer weather fans are certainly loving this, but normally it comes at a price, and one being severe weather, and two just being a lot of rain. When you get an active pattern with low pressures cutting across the country, normally you get a moist flow out the Gulf of Mexico. It just brings a lot of rain and just clouds. If it's not raining, there's usually a lot of clouds. It's normally not like a bright sunny day by any means, but rain along the Gulf Coast. I'm struggling talking the last few videos. I'm trying to just slow down. But there's going to be a good bit of rain along the Gulf Coast over the next probably 36, 48 hours. Maybe a half inch to 2 inches of rain, just depending on where you are. But leading up to New Year's Eve, we'll start this off New Year's Eve morning. You're going to be waking up to widespread rains in a lot of Ohio, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, most of Kentucky, most of Tennessee, and some shower activity in the Mid-South. This will continue through about midday New Year's Eve, and rain will be moving through West Virginia, western Pennsylvania, western New York State, and I mean all rain. Even for the higher elevations up here in the interior Northeast, this will be all rain. It's not cold enough for snow, but some heavier rain down here in the Southeast, moving through the foothills and the upstate of South Carolina. And this continues to move through Virginia as we get into the evening hours when the sun's going down. You got rain moving into Washington, D.C., more rain starting to move and develop into Georgia, moving into South Carolina. This is just one run of the NAM. It could change. And, you know, by the time everybody's gathering in New York City to watch the ball drop, there's going to be some, if it's not raining, it'll be very damp where some rain's already moved through prior. And it's just going to be damp. If it's not raining, it'll be rather damp. A little bit of snow to bring in the new year for some of Wisconsin up here in the UP and Michigan. But it's going to be very damp if you're basically in the central to eastern areas of the Ohio Valley, mid-south, deep south, points east. It's going to be pretty soggy. If it's not raining, like I said, it will probably be pretty damp and definitely above average temperature-wise. Moving forward here, as far as rain between now and through New Year's evening, you know, it doesn't show a lot of rain for those areas I just showed, but anybody can pick up 1/10 of an inch to maybe a half inch of rain in these areas. It just depends on where you are. Has a weird little gap here in the interior areas of the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, but you guys can certainly pick up a little bit more rain or maybe a little bit less rain. It just depends. But there is a stripe of heavier rain right over the Ohio Valley. You could pick up 1 inch or 2 of rain. Not of snow, of rain. I think anybody who has snow left, which I'm sure there is. I saw a picture in Northeast Tennessee where there's still snow on the ground. It's going to melt very, very quickly. I think last night was a lot of folks' last freeze for the foreseeable future. Hit 29 degrees at my house, and I think that's the last time we'll hit below freezing for a while. So let's talk about the severe weather event. So there's 2 things to watch here. One is the GFS, and we'll start this off the morning of January 2nd. GFS has a lot of snow in the mountains flying around. You got this surface low that's riding this mid to upper level trough out here. And as it does, the low pressure will scoot across the middle of the country. It promotes some winter weather. We don't know the severity level of how big this winter storm is going to be across areas of Wyoming, the Dakotas, maybe Nebraska, Colorado, but it could be a pretty substantial snowstorm. But we certainly got to just see how this plays out. We don't know if this is going to dump feet of snow or just several inches of snow, but we will try to figure that out here in the coming days. But we'll stop this about midday Monday. Low pressure sitting right here, and there's likely severe weather ongoing right here in Arkansas, and probably some kind of developing line of storms, or it could be a discrete supercellular mode of storms where we certainly would need to watch out for some supercells and things like that. But we just are not quite sure on the storm mode out here. But if we keep going, it's snowing pretty good in the Dakotas, but we just aren't sure of how much snow you folks are going to get. We'll stop it right here. This is around, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 p.m. Central Time out here, give or take an hour. No point in saying a specific time because this is going to bounce back and forth. I'll stop the low pressure here. We'll jump to the European, same kind of deal. One thing you'll notice right off the dot is the winter weather is much further south. So if I stop it right here for 03Z Tuesday, which is late this coming Monday evening of January 2nd, notice the low pressure is sitting right here on the European. If I go to the GFS, the low pressure is way up here in Nebraska. European, it's right down here in southwest Missouri. That makes a huge difference with two things. One thing is, if it does something like the European shows, then winter weather would fall a lot further south, maybe as far south as Kansas. And then it would push the severe weather threat a little bit further south. Now, that it's not going to limit the severe weather threat necessarily, but it'll make a smaller area to be impacted by severe weather. Now, that smaller area, it could be quite intense down here, but it would push basically this sector of ingredients that could cause severe weather. It would kind of shunt it further south. Now, the GFS would pull more of a moist sector further north, well north. And I can already tell you the GFS has ticked towards the European a little bit. But we still got to watch it. But, you know, with the low pressure way up here, allows for more of a bigger moisture return all the way up into Missouri. So I think that this would be a bigger severe weather threat if the GFS plays out for a more widespread area, if that makes sense. But look at the Storm Prediction Center. There's a 15% risk. This covers the entire state of Arkansas and surrounding states, and just figure out where you are on the map and see if you're in that yellow. If you're in southern areas of Missouri, basically the entire Quad States region, Mississippi Valley, big cities like Memphis, Shreveport, Dallas, right there on the border of Tulsa, right up there, almost all the way to Louisville, Kentucky, but not quite. There's a 15% risk of severe weather. This is basically a slight risk at day 5. And it says in the discussion down here, it says, considered a 30% severe area centered over Arkansas, but refrain from doing so since the recent runs are locking into a solution of kind of where the injection is going to occur on this mid-level shortwave trough, this mid-level trough up here that's going to dig into the southwest right here. And they're just not sure basically where the placement of the low pressure is going to be. So it's hard to put basically an enhanced risk, which is that 30% risk, past day 4 for something they are unsure about, obviously. But they are the experts, so we'll continue to monitor what they say. But I can tell you, this is another way to look at it. This is the GFS. And this is for about mid-afternoon Monday. Notice these are dew points into the 60s all the way up into Missouri and southern Illinois, right? And then look at this deep low-level moisture. Dew points well into the 70s, deep down here, hugging the coast, the Gulf Coast of these deep south states down here. Now, you look at the European and compare the dew points, and, you rise into the 50s into areas of Illinois as far as dew points, but you notice right off the dot is there's not as rich low-level moisture that extends further north. It's really just all down here. Now, it still gets pretty far north, but there's a pretty big difference. This is a massive, warm, moist sector right here. You compare it with this, and it's smaller and not as rich as that low-level moisture that you need for severe weather. So you're pulling for the European because I would think that would limit somewhat of the severe weather. It wouldn't take it away, but it will limit it and kind of shrink the area that could see the worst weather, if that makes any sense. So the higher the dew points, the higher the CAPE levels. CAPE is basically that storm fuel for these storms to really fuel off of. It's basically just like jet fuel for these storms to eat up off of, if that makes any sense. But anyways, moving forward here, I like pivotal weather because it tries to attempt to show the storm mode even on global models. So we can look, this starts it off about Monday midday. And if you keep this moving, this is about mid-afternoon Monday. This is Arkansas, northern Louisiana. I know it cuts off these states, but to me, this is, even on the GFS, which is probably the scenario that favors more severe weather for more widespread areas. Even on the GFS, in this case, it looks like it shows a line of storms, not really a discrete mode. But just like with any severe weather threat that has a line of storms, you have to watch right out in front of these storms for anything that can get going ahead of it, and for any kind of discrete supercells to get going. But this looks like a line of storms that blast through, and it really looks what we call kinematic driven, which means it's going to be a big wind threat over a tornado threat. But we have to see. One thing with the GFS also is it would push the severe weather threat further north. So if the low pressure is as far north as what the GFS is showing, which is, way up here, then that would probably mean to me that you're probably going to have a maximized severe weather threat more into Arkansas, maybe even into areas of the Ohio Valley. It's just something you have to watch, because to get the most heightened severe weather threat, you basically need to overlap the best kinematics with the thermodynamics. Kinematics is the winds aloft up in the atmosphere. How fast are they moving? How much are they turning with height? Thermodynamics is your surface temperatures, surface dew points, your CAPE levels, things like that. So where do they overlap the best? That's where your biggest severe weather threat's going to be. And that's where they will always highlight on the Storm Prediction Center where your worst conditions will be. So that will be pushed north if the GFS was to play out. On the European, it would be pushed south. So that's why there's disagreements, and that's why they haven't put an enhanced risk at day 5. But what we do know is if something like the GFS plays out, dew points will quickly spike into the 60s as far north as central Missouri. And then obviously a moving air mass will take down and move in some more stable air behind this, and then the severe weather threat shrinks. But dew points spike into the 60s, and I think the biggest threat from the GFS would probably be somewhere in Arkansas where dew points almost reach the 70s, along with a lot of kinematic energy. And with the spike in dew points, you get a spike in CAPE. So, in these purple areas right here, and I'm just showing this off the GFS on the fly here, that's CAPE levels reaching 1,000 joules per kilogram. And once you start to get into that territory, mixed in with this low-level jet right here, and then that becomes a dangerous setup with overlapping dynamics that can create a severe weather event. But when we're this far out, guys, all I can do is just repeat the same information until we get in these short-range models. You guys know the deal. We've been watching for a while. Low pressure popping off the Rockies, and with it pushing up a substantial what we call low-level jet, which is winds about a mile up in the atmosphere. And how much are they turning with the mid-level jets? We got to figure that out. So we know the ingredients are there, which is your low-level moisture, that low-level jet, the kinematics, the surface temperatures, which are going to be well into the 60s and 70s, which isn't as big of a deal as all these other things, but at the same time, it's a big factor. And the CAPE levels. All we can do is keep looking at this information, and as soon as we get in these short-range models, which we will in the next 48 hours, we will know exactly, not exactly, obviously, we never know exactly what's going to happen, but we will have a much better idea what's going to happen. But if I'm in Arkansas and surrounding sections of each state, kind of this area I'm circling, I would just be prepared for some nasty weather our first Monday of the new year. But that's all I got, guys. A reminder, I will not be able to get a video out tomorrow. I will try to squeeze one in the morning, but definitely will not have one for tomorrow evening. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and y'all have a great evening.